I think a lot of credit to what we're talking about, what you're talking about, of course, goes to Mike Brown and what he's done. But after that, I think a lot of credit goes to Jalen Brunson. And I want to focus on him for a second because it's funny because I think that there are outside fans who would call Brunson overrated, and then there are Knicks fans who would call Brunson underrated. And it's just such an interesting dynamic of like trying to analyze him objectively. But I think that whether you're on the in or you're on the out in terms of like rooting for him or how biased you may be, most people would assume that the majority of his offensive impact and his offensive value comes from like what he does with the ball in his hands and how he's scoring, which is maybe fair, or at least in past seasons fair. But I think this whole thing is working because of what you said about how Brunson is sort of scaling up and down and toggling on and off ball. And that's something I don't think anybody's really given him credit for. And I think that this doesn't work unless Brunson identifies that this couldn't be another postseason where he was amazing. He was carrying the whole thing on his back, and the Knicks get bounced. And it's like, when is somebody going to show up? When is Brunson going to get some help? I think there was some introspection there on his part. And he was like, I have the guys who can help me. I have to let them help me. Like I have to be, and it's not about so much him being a facilitator. It's almost about him taking the hand off the wheel and letting him have a co-partner, a co-driver of the offense. And then when you mix in what Mike Brown I'm sure Mike Brown and Jalen Brunson have had discussions, and Mike Brown has told him what the vision was for the offense, what he sees in Karl-Anthony Towns, how it could help everybody. Like you from day one have been talking about Karl-Anthony Towns as a passer, and you and I have had debates, disagreements about Jalen Brunson, how adept he is as a passer. But I think that relative to position, we both agree Towns is probably the superior passer. And I think that that's been a way that they've been able to get these maximized versions of Hart and of of Bridges and OG Anunoby and now Deuce McBride after that crazy game 4. Like they knew they needed all these guys to win a championship, and they found a way to do it with Brunson remaining a super impactful version of himself. And so I think that Brunson's not going to get the credit. Ironically, he's not going to get the credit that he was getting in past seasons when he was doing it all by himself. But I think he actually deserves more credit because he has empowered the entire team.
It's really interesting. Like, I think there's a lot of merit to what you're saying. I think that I think that a lot of his offensive value and impact does come, or most of his offensive value and impact does come from what he does with the ball in his hands and his ability to create shots and to be able to take no advantage and turn it into an advantage single-handedly. When teams play, in my opinion, poor defense on him, send blitzes to his face, for example, or a lot of that comes from the fact of just teams see him as a threat with the ball in his hands, a guy who you give him the ball and you try to put anybody on him and you don't really feel comfortable with it because he can get to a high percentage shot, maybe not the most efficient shot, but he can get to a high percentage shot, a shot that he can make at a decent rate of time. And those guys, I do think a ton of their value really does come from what they do with the ball. That being said, I think that Brunson has kind of always toggled. I don't think this is like the first time he's done this. I think he's always, I think that his issue has been, it hasn't always been at the right time and to the right, I'm trying to think of the right word for it. I can't think of the right word for it, but it hasn't been at the right time and with the right like effectiveness insofar as like starting the game, we see things just running almost purely through Towns. And that makes sense because Towns has the advantage when you have a 5 on him. You know, we just did a video essay where we talked about this. You have a 5 on him. He's pulling that rim protector away from the rim. Now you have a huge advantage as a team because their biggest guy, their guy is going to defend shot attempts at the rim, the highest value shot in basketball. That guy is nowhere to be found. He's way out there on the perimeter, 24, 25 feet away from the rim sometimes. And so that's going to make Bridges, Hart, and OG and even Brunson way more effective as players in that condition. So you're leveraging that ability, and that's the game plan. So to me, and this is, it's so weird because it's like I'm taking credit away from Brunson. I don't feel like I am, because I feel like I've credited Brunson in this way before. I don't think he's like a selfish player or a guy who refuses to play in this way or just wants to play as like, this kind of hero ball like style. I really think it's been a coaching issue, like for the most part, in my opinion. And so now the strategy going into games is Towns is going to run the ship. Towns is going to do this, and Jalen's going along with it, which is great. But like, I don't think he wouldn't go along with it. I don't think he'd be like, I don't think if it was last season, Tibbs would be like, okay, Towns going to, operate from this is where the advantage is. This is how we're going to operate. And Brunson would be like, well, when he passes me the ball, I'm going to go one-on-one. I don't care. Like I'm going to do my own thing. I don't think that's what would have happened. I think he would have just played it the way that he was supposed to play it. But that's never been the approach. The approach has been, Jalen, we need you to create the offense. We need you to get things going. And so I don't think he's had an unwillingness to toggle. I think he does toggle, but it's been more like up to his discretion as opposed to the approach offensively of the team, of the coaching staff, and the way that they want to stylistically try to win games on the offensive end. And that's the thing that's changed to me more so than necessarily something coming from Brunson or stemming from him having like a change or like realization or anything like that. Not to say that you're saying that necessarily, but it's more, in my opinion, I would say, a credit to Mike Brown than it is necessarily a credit to Jalen. And that doesn't take away from what Jalen is doing, because I think he's been incredible.